What is up, everybody? It's your boy Gordo bringing you another video. So I was standing here on the front of the boat and I was sitting here and I was like, I haven't really done any of my favorite baits because I have a bunch of favorite baits, but it also varies year to year. My last favorite bait video was back in last year's my fall, and that was just my early fall. Like my boat ended up catching on fire. I was out until pretty much the beginning of this year. So anyways, obviously I'm back. And I wanted to, summer's right around the corner. I mean, it is 91 degrees today and it is hot. It is hot. But with summer right around the corner, I know a lot of you guys are gonna be, hitting the water. And I'm here to tell you, with my favorite baits, you're pretty much armed for every situation that you're in. So let's get into it. So my number one favorite bait in the summer, I always have one tied on. There's always going to be fish shallow, and whenever it comes to getting into the thick grass, matted reeds, lily pads, and you don't want to get hung up with the jig, the flipping rig is by far my absolute favorite setup. This one's a Phoenix M1. It's a 7.2 heavy, extra fast. I just love it for my flipping setup. Lose MB, and with this one, I switched up to 25-pound line this year, but I stay away from braid. I mean, just because of how clear the water is where we live. With my flipping setup, I always have a bobber stop. So I rock a bobber stop. I rock a flipping weight. It's a tungsten. This one's a 1/2 ounce flipping weight. Always go with tungsten, but tied to a size 3 VMC heavy duty extra wide gap. A lot of people, they do flipping hooks. Personally, I don't care for the flipping hooks. Personal preference. I don't notice a bad hookup ratio with this as opposed to a flipping hook. So pick your choice, pick your poison, whatever you want to do. But that right there is my flipping setup. And that, I mean, I have that tied on at all times. You guys saw in the last video, the Long Lake Redemption. If you haven't watched that video, you definitely should, because that's a pretty good one. I was set out to try to find some largemouth on a lake that's notorious for having big largemouth, but they're hard to find. And this right here was the exact setup that I catch them on. So that right there would be my number one. I pretty much have that tied on. That pretty much had that tied on at all times, no matter where I'm fishing, everywhere. That's just number one go-to for me. Always. And so also, with the fish in summertime, after they spawn, a lot of them go pretty deep. A lot of them go deep, a lot of them stay shallow. You're always gonna be able to catch fish on docks. And if there's one bait that I always have tied on all year long, but it is really a staple for me in the summertime, like late summer, the football jig. A 1/2 ounce football jig. Pick your color. I mean, this lake is super clear, so I got a green pumpkin one on. Whenever it's high sun, no wind, I like to stay away from the glittery colors. Either way, I have that paired with a chigger bug. It's a Berkeley chigger bug. Trailer in the summertime, you just want something that's got a lot of action, swimming, kicking, the good stuff. But also paired with this, you'll slow down the rate of fall, so keep that in mind. If you believe that you're on a reaction bite, it's a lot better to switch to like a beaver style trailer. That way you get a more quick fall. For my football head rod, I have 18-pound line on this one. A little bit lighter line. Whenever I'm fishing deeper, like I'll drag a football head in 30 feet of water. Definitely the deep weed lines, especially after they spawn, the deep weed lines are one of my favorite ways to catch fish. I love fishing the deep weed lines. And so 18-pound fluorocarbon, I'm not a brand whore. I fish Seagar and I fish FC Sniper, so I fish a couple different types of fluorocarbon. It's whatever you like. A lot of people like the big game or whatever, it's whatever you like. But same situation, Phoenix M1, this is just their newer version. This one's a 7.4. I like to be able to get longer cast whenever it comes to that. So this one's a 7.4, extra fast, heavy. I just love the Phoenix M1 rods. They're so good. But same reel, lose MB. But with these you'll cast out a lot of the times, and I'm just dragging it, and I'll keep my finger on my line like this. So you're really feeling for the bite. Drag it, you'll feel it come over rocks or whatever, and you feel the bites a little bit better if you keep your finger on the line when you're dragging a jig. But jigs are the 4x4 of the fishing world. I mean, you can flip it, drag it, hop it, skip it. It's like the shrimp, the shrimp of the sea or whatever. But you can do pretty much anything with it. And so that right there is by far a staple for me in the summertime. What would be a summertime pattern without a frog? I mean, if you're not throwing a frog in the summertime, what are you doing? I mean, you're missing one of the most fun ways to possibly catch a fish. There's nothing like having a big old bass blow up on a topwater frog. On matted grass, I prefer the walking frogs. Whenever it comes to like sparse grass, sparse cover, a lot of stumps, I like the popping frog. I like to be able to put it into areas, and you can also walk it and pop it. Or for my frogs, I really like the pop and pad crashers from Booyah. They're they're cheaper than most of the frogs out there. Bass Pro Shop makes a pretty good frog, but if you buy their frog, which I did a review on theirs, you're gonna need to put some glue right down in here. But they look and feel identical to a Spro, which that's what this is. This is a Spro popping frog. And you know, for the price of the Bass Pro Shop's frog compared to everybody else's, I mean, a tube of super glue, I mean, I don't know, do whatever you want. If you got money, I like the Spro. They're just a little more expensive. But, you know, whenever it comes to the color of the frog, I've caught fish in crystal clear water on a sunny day on a black frog. I've caught crystal clear water, no wind, sunny day on a white frog. I don't know. But one thing I do with all of my frogs is I will trim the legs just a little bit. And I'll make one of them just a little bit longer than the other one whenever I'm trying to walk them. So it definitely helps out with the walking action. But, you know, I have this paired on a Dobyns Fury 734C, so it's like a 7.3 heavy, essentially is what it is. 65-pound braid. I prefer heavy braid because I cast this thing into some nasty stuff. So I just, braided line is definitely the way to go. You get a good hook set, you know, there's no stretch. The reel, same one. It's a Lose MB. It's my favorite reel of all time ever. I'm sad that they're discontinued, and I don't know what I'm going to do now that they're discontinued. I don't know which reels I'm going to go for. But that right there is my frogging rod, and that is a mandatory bait for the summertime. Now my next bait, that is, I would say, my favorite summertime bait, falls into 1,005 different ways that you could rig it. It would, by far, absolute must-have a Senko. I mean, if you're not fishing a Senko, I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice. I mean, a lot of people, they're like, oh, it's a do-nothing bait. Why wouldn't you want to do nothing to catch fish? As for this, right now, I have this Senko Nico rigged. In the summertime, a lot of the times, I'll Texas weightless rig a Senko, just a standard light wire EWG hook, just regular old hook, Texas rig it. I mean, you skip that thing underneath docks, skip it into pads. I mean, it is a phenomenal way to catch fish, especially in clear water applications. But I have this rigged up here, Nico style. So what that is you have a nail weight, and you just essentially shove the nail weight into the head of the Senko like that. So you have a nail weight sitting in there. You have a little O-ring, and then I prefer the octopus hooks or the circle hooks. I believe that's a size 1 circle hook. That way that fish grabs it, that little point, I don't know if you can see that, but how the hook kind of comes around. That fish grabs it, you literally, all you have to do is just lift up, and that hook, that point grabs and sets on its own. I mean, it is beautiful for do-nothing hook sets on light line, and you don't miss a lot of fish on that. But with the Nico rig, I have this currently on a medium 6.6. It's a little medium 6.6, you know, fast action. It's a Vengeance. It's like a $40 rod. I got this rod at Walmart. And this one's on a loose speed spool. It's a 6/8-1, and I have it on 12-pound fluorocarbon line. I mean, this would be one of the rods that would just be a go-to for any sort of lighter baits. Senko, I mean, you can fish them weighted wacky, you can fish them wacky rigged weightless, you can fish them Texas rigged. You can fish them weightless Texas rigged. You could flip a Senko. Like you could do, there's so many things you can do with the Senko that catches fish. So that would definitely be one of my absolute must-have baits on the boat for summertime fishing. And so the last bait that I'm going to put into this video would be one of those whenever the fish are post-spawned, you know, midsummer. A lot of guys in the south are able to crank ledges and all that type of deal, but whenever it comes to where I live, I don't really have that available to me. So I use a deep diving crankbait for the deep grass edges. You know, whenever the grass is full, thick grass at 18 feet, and then it's just like little tiny sprouts out in 20 up to like 22 feet. It's hard to beat a crankbait out there, man. It really is. It's just, you can cover a ton of water, you can find the fish, and it's just a great way to catch them. This right here is a 5XD, Strike King 5XD. I fish the perch color a lot because that's our main forage of food here, is perch. Some lakes here have bluegill, have a high population of bluegill, but for the most part, if you live in the Northwest, you can't go wrong with the perch color. I mean, it's just our main forage of food for the bass here. But the 5XD, I fished this one on it's just my go-to crankbait rod. This is like a $30 crankbait rod that I got from a general store here. Just a 7-foot, medium moderate. I got it on 12-pound fluorocarbon, and this one is the Revo X. It's a 5/4-to-1 crankbait reel. And man, I'm gonna be sad whenever I finally break this rod. I mean, this rod is so good for light crankbaits. If I was throwing a 10XD, obviously I'd go to a different rod, heavier rod, 6XD, heavier rod, maybe heavier line. I'd jump up to either 14 or 15 pound line. But whenever it comes to a mandatory summer bait in my mind, it would be a deep diver. Whenever it comes to the 5XD, man, I have caught an absolute ton of fish on this, smallmouth, largemouth, everything on these, and they just work. I mean, they're pretty cheap. You don't care to lose them. I can't think of a much better crankbait to use on the grass edges. Whenever you got 18 feet, you can cast, like, if you position your boat on, so let's just say this is the grass line, you position your boat on it and you're on the front, you're casting down it. You can also kind of 45-degree angle into it, so then you're bringing it over the tops of the grass and out. And so that's one, if they're like more in the grass and not necessarily on the edge, that's a great way to do it. If you throw a 6XD in 18 feet and you have grass in there, you're just gonna be fighting grass the whole time. I mean, if you're doing the 45-degree angles, you'll get grass on here, you know, quite a bit, but it's not as detrimental to your mental, it's not as detrimental to your psyche. But either way, that right there would definitely be a mandatory have to have on the boat whenever you're talking about summertime fishing. But that's gonna be it for me. If you guys have any other summer baits that you prefer to fish, let me know in the comment section, because I'm always down to try new baits and I always like to see what everybody else is fishing. I know most of you guys are from here in the Northwest, but you know, if you're down south or East Coast or wherever, let me know in the comment section what you guys like to fish in the summertime, because I'd like to try it out up here in my lakes. Appreciate everybody watching. Hope you guys all have a great summer. Hope you guys get out and catch some fish this year, and I will see you in the next one.